Before we begin, if you love epic HFY sci-fi, tales where humanity defies impossible odds against alien empires, make sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next story. Now, let's dive into tonight's tale. The stars glimmered against the obsidian sweep of space, a cold tapestry that Admiral Hale had studied all his life. From the observation deck of the flagship Resolute, he watched Earth's orbit bustling with ships, freighters, war cruisers, and research vessels, all testaments to humanity's relentless rise. 1,000 years of progress had pushed mankind from fractured tribes on a single world to a civilization of colonies spanning 22 star systems. And yet, in the hollow of Hale's chest, pride warred with unease. The historian's warnings gnawed at him. Irinder Velis stood apart, robes of aged wool falling awkwardly among the crisp uniforms of Naval Command. His hair was the color of frost, his face lined with centuries of sorrow. He was not a soldier, yet the High Command had summoned him to speak before the admirals and governors. When the council chamber hushed, his voice carried with surprising strength. We stand at the edge of a threshold, as we have before. Every 1,000 years, humanity builds, reaches, aspires. And every 1,000 years, we are struck down, cast back into the mud from which we crawled. A low murmur rippled through the assembly. Hale's jaw tightened. He had heard whispers of this cycle before, dismissed them as superstition. But Velis's eyes burned with conviction. The Galactic Council, the historian continued, has decreed that mankind must not advance unchecked. Records hidden in ruins, coded into artifacts scattered across forgotten colonies. They all point to the same truth. We have risen before, and they have torn us down each time. Commander Rurik Holt, seated beside Hale, leaned forward. His frame was as solid as a fortress wall, his uniform immaculate, every motion precise. If what you claim is true, Elder, then humanity has no memory of these past ages. How could we forget a fall so great? Because they ensure we forget, Velis said. Libraries burned, networks erased, leaders assassinated, worlds bombarded. Survivors are forced back to primitive life, and after generations, knowledge becomes myth. Each rise is faster than the last, but each fall is absolute. Joran Vare laughed sharply from across the chamber, breaking the tension. The young pilot sprawled carelessly in his chair, boots crossed at the ankles, a wolfish grin tugging at his mouth. So we're supposed to believe some alien cabal swoops in every millennium to smack us down like unruly children? Sounds like a fairy tale for frightened old men. Velis turned to him, unshaken. You joke because the truth terrifies you. Mark my words, the 1,000th year approaches. Look around you. Our fleets grow bold, our colonies ambitious. The Council will not allow it. They never do. Hale wanted to dismiss the man, to restore order and focus on tangible threats. Yet unease lingered. The fleet's intelligence reports had already noted strange movements beyond the frontier. Alien vessels gathering in systems where no wars raged, no disputes brewed. Too organized for coincidence. Too ominous for comfort. His private doubts were interrupted when the chamber's holoscreens flickered to life. A figure materialized, tall, cloaked in flowing silver, eyes glimmering like molten glass. Counselor Threxer of the Galactic Council stood before them, his presence cold as the void. Humans, the alien's voice rang across the chamber, resonant and inhuman. You stand at the brink once more. Your expansion exceeds the balance decreed by the Council. Your fleets bristle with weapons. Your colonies breed unchecked ambition. This is unacceptable. The chamber erupted in shouts. Hale rose to his feet, fists clenched. By what right do you dictate our destiny? Humanity has earned its place among the stars. Threxer's expression did not change, but his tone sharpened. By the right of survival. The Council's safeguards order. You are a species of fire. Left ungoverned, you consume all. Thus, as before, you will be restrained. Your technology dismantled. Your knowledge contained. Compliance will spare you annihilation. Joran barked a laugh. Restraint? You mean chains. He slammed a fist against the table. Let them come. I'd rather die than crawl back into caves. Rurik's face darkened, torn between discipline and defiance. Admiral, we cannot resist a council fleet. Their armadas dwarf ours tenfold. Velus's gaze pierced Hale's. Do you see? The pattern repeats. We must decide, submit and be broken, or defy them and risk extinction. Hale's chest tightened with a weight of command. He saw in Joran the reckless hunger of youth, in Rurik the measured loyalty of a soldier, in Velus the haunted wisdom of a man who had pieced together truths no one wished to believe. And above them all, the alien's threat loomed like a blade. The chamber lights dimmed, replaced by tactical projections. Orbital defenses lit up in crimson across the holomap. Massive fleets, larger than anything humanity had yet fielded, were crossing into the system. Triangular vessels kilometers long, their hulls bristling with energy lances, advanced with the inevitability of a tidal wave. Threxer's hologram inclined its head, a gesture almost of pity. You have one final choice. Surrender your advancements peacefully or face the cleansing fire. The transmission vanished, leaving silence thick as ash. Hale's officers turned to him, awaiting orders. His throat felt dry, words heavy as iron. To fight was madness. To yield was slavery. Yet neither path offered survival. Joran leaned across the table, eyes gleaming with feral light. Say the word, Admiral. Let's show them what humans are made of. Velus shook his head slowly. If we resist without strategy, we will be crushed as before. But if we bow, we forfeit any chance to break the cycle. Hale's heart pounded, the weight of 1,000 forgotten years pressing on his shoulders. He stared at the holographic swarm of alien warships drawing ever closer, and for the first time in his long career, he felt the vastness of history bearing down on him. The chamber doors trembled as alarms shrieked through the station. The first reports arrived, Council fleets breaching the outer defenses, orbital platforms falling silent one by one. Humanity's golden age balanced on the edge of a knife, and the blade was already descending. Hale closed his eyes for a heartbeat, then opened them with steel. Whatever path they chose, it would define humanity's fate, not just for this age, but for all ages to come. The bombardments began with precision. Unlike the crude wars of humanity's past, the Council struck with surgical cruelty. No flames, no radiation, no cities leveled into rubble. Instead, pulses of invisible energy cascaded across the colonies, erasing data cores, shorting reactors, rendering starships into lifeless hulks. Towers of glass and steel remained standing, yet inside them screens went dark, machinery stalled, and the heart of progress ceased to beat. In hours, worlds that had thrived for centuries staggered as though cast into a long night. On the bridge of the Resolute, Hale Draven watched his fleets struggle in futility. Human cruisers fired volleys of plasma. Missiles streaked into the void, but the enemy's vessels slid aside with elegant precision, shields swallowing fire without strain. It was a predator toying with prey. Hale's fists pressed against the railing until his knuckles whitened. They're dismantling us without even killing, Rurik muttered at his side. His normally steady voice carried a tremor. They could have burned our worlds, but they choose to strip us instead. It's worse than slaughter, Hale replied. At least the dead do not remember their chains. An alert flared crimson across the tactical display. A squadron of human fighters had broken formation, diving headlong into the Council fleet. Hale's eyes narrowed. Only one pilot he knew would dare such recklessness. Joran Vair's voice crackled through the comms, wild with adrenaline. You wanted submission, monsters? You'll choke on human fire first. His squadron erupted against the alien ships, missiles striking hulls with suicidal proximity. For the first time, Council shields faltered, one vessel spiraling into fragments. The bridge erupted with cheers that died as quickly as they had risen. The Council responded with pitiless speed. Beams of coherent light carved through Joran's squadron, ships winking out one after another. His final transmission carried laughter, defiant, manic, before his fighter vanished in fire. Silence weighed heavy in the aftermath. Rurik bowed his head, jaw locked, while Hale stood, unmoving, the loss burning like acid in his chest. Joran had been a reckless fool, but his courage had cracked the illusion of council invulnerability. For a heartbeat, humanity had drawn blood. Irinder Velis entered the bridge, robes brushing against steel. His face was grave, yet in his eyes burned a light Hale had not seen before. "It begins as it always does," the historian said softly. "But we are not as helpless as they believe." Hale turned sharply. "Speak plainly." Velis held out a thin slate, its surface etched with archaic symbols. "In my research, I uncovered fragments left by those who lived through the last cycle, hidden beneath ruins on Charon's moon, sealed to escape the Council's purge. It tells of humanity's previous rises, each swifter than the last. We adapt. We endure. The Council fears us because we are not like the others." Hale scanned the slate, lines of coded warnings carved by forgotten hands. His pulse quickened. "You're saying this has happened before, and survivors left us a message." "More than a message," Velis replied. "A challenge. They wrote, 'Defy the cycle or die forgotten.' They knew surrender meant oblivion. Only resistance carries memory forward." Rurik's voice was low, taut with conflict. "Defiance means extinction. We can't match their fleets. Even Joran's sacrifice barely scratched them." Velis stepped closer, his frail hands gripping the rail. "Do you not see? The Council's fear proves our strength. Every millennium, we rise faster, stronger. They fear that if even one cycle endures, humanity will eclipse them all. That is why they strike, not from justice, but from terror." Hale's mind raced. The Council's tactics were too precise, too practiced. They intended not annihilation, but control. Yet if Velis was right, humanity's very existence threatened the hierarchy of the galaxy. And if that was true, then surrender offered no safety. Chains would only delay the inevitable purge. A message burst across the comms, Council frequencies overriding human networks. Threxer's voice filled the bridge, calm as drifting ash. "Your resistance is noted. Already your fleets falter, your worlds darken. Comply, and your people may endure as caretakers of soil and stone. Persist, and we will strip you to dust." Hale's officers looked to him, fear etched across their faces. In that silence, Hale felt the weight of choice pressing heavier than any command he had borne. To kneel meant condemning humanity to centuries of ignorance, perhaps forever. To fight meant risking every soul under his watch. "Admiral," Rurik said at last, voice raw, "if we resist, we condemn millions more to die as Joran did. If we submit, we lose everything we've built. Either path may end us." Hale's gaze shifted to Velis. "And yet you would have us defy." The historian's reply was steady. "Better to fall as men than live as cattle. If the cycle is ever to be broken, it must be in our time. There may be no other." The bridge shook under the impact of distant strikes. Warning lights cascaded down the walls as the Council closed its grip. Hale felt his heartbeat thunder in his ears, his thoughts sharpening into steel. He turned to his officers, voice firm, commanding. "We will not bow. Gather what remains of our fleets. We strike where they least expect, hit supply chains, sabotage their networks. If we cannot win by strength, we will win by endurance. Humanity does not kneel." Rurik's eyes widened, torn between loyalty and fear. Slowly, he nodded. Velis's lined face softened with something like pride. Threxer's transmission lingered for a moment, then faded. For the first time, Hale thought he glimpsed something in the alien's gaze. Not disdain, but unease. Perhaps even doubt. The bridge fell into motion as officers carried out orders. But Hale lingered by the viewport, staring into the vast darkness where Joran had fallen. The young pilot's reckless fire had not been in vain. His defiance was the spark. Now Hale would carry it forward, kindling it into a blaze that no Council fleet could extinguish. Beyond the viewport, the alien armadas shifted, vast and unyielding. Yet within Hale, a conviction hardened. Humanity had been broken before, but this time, the cycle would not go unanswered. Smoke drifted above the ruins of Solara Prime, once a jewel of human civilization, now reduced to silent towers and powerless streets. Children scavenged by candlelight, while farmers tore apart broken machines to forge crude tools. The Council's precision strikes had left the world intact, but hollowed, a monument to stagnation. Yet whispers spread through the ashes, rumors of resistance, stories of Admiral Hale, Draven refusing to yield. Those whispers hardened into vows, and scattered men took up arms. On the Resolute, Hale stood before a dimly lit holomap, tracking reports from colonies that had not yet fallen silent. Smugglers ran supplies through shadowed routes. Engineers repurposed mining lasers into weapons, and soldiers who had lost families pledged themselves to a war they knew could not be won. He saw the pattern forming, a web of defiance stretching across star systems, fragile but alive. Commander Rurik Holt entered, his boots heavy against the steel. His uniform was scuffed, eyes ringed with exhaustion. Admiral, another strike on the outer colonies. They've lost power grids, but the survivors are rallying. They call themselves Joran's Flame. The name hung in the air, both wound and inspiration. Joran Vair's reckless assault had become legend within weeks, a symbol that the Council could bleed. Hale allowed himself a thin smile. Then his fire was not wasted. Rurik hesitated before speaking again. Admiral, I was loyal to the chain of command, to order above all. But order means nothing if it chains us to extinction. I will follow you, wherever this path leads. Hale clasped his shoulder, the gesture uncharacteristic of his usual reserve. Then you're no longer a soldier bound by orders. You're a man bound by choice. That is what they fear most. Across the chamber, Irinder Velis studied fragments of recovered data, the glow of his slate casting shadows across his line features. The resistance grows, but it cannot endure without more than fire. Passion alone cannot outlast the Council's fleets. We need knowledge hidden from their grasp. Hale turned. You found something? Velis nodded slowly. A thread. Among the ruins of Datharos, fragments of transmissions survived, coordinates leading beyond mapped space. I believe they're the remnants of those who escaped the last purge. Rurik frowned. Survivors? That's impossible. The Council leaves no loose ends. Yet the message is there, Velis replied. And if they endured, even in secret, they may hold what we need to turn this war into more than defiance. Hale felt the weight of the choice settle on him again. Every moment spent chasing shadows risked lives. Yet if there truly were survivors, remnants of knowledge lost to the cycle, the gamble might be the only hope left. Before he could answer, alarms split the air. The holomap blazed red. Council fleets were advancing, their vectors converging on Solara Prime. Hale's jaw tightened. So they come to snuff out the spark. The Resolute shuddered as enemy fire lanced across the system. Hale snapped orders, his voice steel. Deploy strike wings. Scatter and bleed them. Make them think we are cornered. Rurik barked confirmations, moving with renewed resolve. Velis remained still, eyes fixed on the distant stars, as though measuring history against the moment. The battle that followed was chaos wrought into strategy. Human ships darted from asteroid fields, loosing barges before vanishing into debris. Supply convoys lured Council cruisers into ambushes, detonating their own cargo to cripple the enemy. Losses were staggering, yet for the first time, the Council's advance slowed. Reports of damaged flagships rippled through the fleet, disbelief giving way to grim hope. In the heart of the fight, Hale watched as Rurik led a wing of bombers personally, his disciplined maneuvers carving through enemy escorts. It was as if the commander's loyalty, once tethered to submission, had been reforged into fury. When the battle ended, the Resolute limped through debris fields thick with wreckage. Hundreds of human lives lost, yet a Council cruiser lay in smoking ruin, proof that their might was not untouchable. The crew erupted in ragged cheers. Hale silenced them with a raised hand. This was not victory, he said, voice carrying through the calms. This was survival bought with blood. The Council will come again, in greater force. But today, humanity did not kneel. Remember that. Later, in the quiet of the war room, Velis placed the slate on the table, the coordinates glowing faintly. Admiral, the resistance can only endure if we give them more than fire. If these coordinates hold what I believe, it could be the key, a memory from those who defied the cycle before us. Rurik, still marked with battle grime, leaned against the table. And if it's a trap? If the Council planted it long ago to draw out rebels like us? Velis met his gaze with unwavering calm. Then we die seeking truth instead of living in chains. Is that not worth the risk? Hale studied both men. One, a soldier hardened by loyalty, now remade by rebellion. The other, a keeper of forgotten history, offering a path lined with uncertainty. He thought of Joran's fire, of the civilians arming themselves with broken machines, of children in the ruins of Solara Prime clinging to whispered hope. He made his decision. Prepare the fleet. We follow the coordinates. If there are survivors of the last cycle, we will find them. If there is knowledge hidden, we will claim it. Humanity has risen and fallen too many times. This time we rise to stay. Velis inclined his head, a flicker of triumph in his weary eyes. Rurik gave a short, firm nod, his doubts crushed beneath resolve. Outside the viewport, the Council's ships regrouped, a storm gathering in silence. Hale knew they would come again, fiercer, determined to erase the flame that refused to die. Yet within him, the choice was no longer clouded by hesitation. Resistance was no longer defiance. It was survival, it was memory, it was destiny. The coordinates burned on the slate like a beacon, a promise carved by forgotten hands across the gulf of centuries. Somewhere beyond known space lay either salvation or the final grave of mankind. And Hale Draven would lead humanity there, no matter the cost. The void beyond the frontier was darker than any Hale Draven had known, a silence heavy with secrets. For weeks, the Resolute and its battered fleet pursued the coordinates etched into the historian's slate, guided by little more than faith. Systems passed, barren and forgotten, until at last they emerged into a graveyard of shattered moons and hollowed asteroids. At its heart spun a station unlike anything in human records, ancient, jagged, and yet alive with faint pulses of light. Irinder Velis's breath caught as the structure loomed across the viewport. It is as I hoped. Survivors did endure, and they built this. His voice carried both awe and sorrow, as if speaking to ghosts long past. Docking was perilous, the station's systems groaning awake as though roused from slumber. Within, Hale and a hand-picked team advanced through dim corridors. They found men, human men, hard-eyed, scarred, clad in armor pieced together from relics of another age. Their leader stepped forward, taller than Hale, his voice rough as gravel. "We are the forgotten," he said, "descendants of those who fled the Purge 1,000 years ago. The Council never found us, but we have lived in exile, clinging to fragments of what was lost. Why have you come?" Hale met his gaze without flinching. "Because the cycle must end. We rise, they strike us down, and humanity forgets. We will not forget again. We came for what you guard." The man studied him, then nodded once. "Then you will have it. The knowledge we preserved is yours to wield. But beware. Using it will mark you for extermination beyond all hope of mercy." Velis stepped forward, eyes glistening. "Mercy is an illusion they use to bind us. Give us the tools, and we will fight." In hidden vaults, they found weapons of impossible design, technologies stripped from the Council in ages past. Hale watched as engineers fused them with their own ships, crude human ingenuity stitching ancient power into living steel. For the first time, the fleet did not feel like prey. It felt like a storm. The Council came swiftly, drawn by the disturbance. Armadas filled the void, their numbers beyond reckoning, their confidence absolute. At the forefront appeared the silver figure of Threxer, his voice cold as ever. So the embers of past rebellions still flicker. You dig into graves to unearth forgotten fire. Futile. This ends now. Hale stood on the bridge, surrounded by Rurik and Velis, the weight of centuries pressing down. Then let it end, he replied, voice steady. But not as it has before. The final battle erupted with ferocity unlike any before. Human vessels surged forward, their weapons blazing with ancient fury and modern precision. Council cruisers faltered under barges they had not anticipated, shields fracturing under relentless strikes. Hale maneuvered with ruthless clarity, directing feints and ambushes through asteroid fields, bleeding the enemy with every move. Rurik led the vanguard, his ship tearing into enemy lines, buying precious moments at the cost of his own safety. His voice thundered over comms, steady despite the chaos. For every age they stole from us, strike true. Velis, in the communications chamber, broadcast across every frequency, his words carried on stolen channels. People of the galaxy, hear the truth. The Council has shackled humanity for millennia, striking us down each time we dare to rise. They claim order, but it is fear that guides them. Fear of us. Fear of what we might become. His voice, though aged, rang with the fire of conviction, carrying into systems both near and far. The Council struck back with overwhelming force. Beams of light shredded human frigates, turning proud vessels into drifting wrecks. Yet the fleet endured, every sacrifice buying another opening. Hale felt each loss as a blade to his heart, but he pressed on, his eyes fixed on the colossal control hubs that directed the Council's fleets. Rurik's ship, battered and burning, broke through enemy lines. Admiral, he said, voice ragged, the hub ahead, it's vulnerable. I can reach it, but I won't come back. Hale's throat tightened. Rurik, you don't have to. Yes, I do, came the reply, calm and resolute. I spent my life obeying. Let me end it choosing. Hale closed his eyes, then gave the only answer he could. Then go with honor. Rurik's ship streaked toward the hub, weaving through a storm of fire, before detonating in a blaze that consumed the core. Shockwaves rippled across the battlefield as the Council's formations broke, their command structure unraveling. Seizing the moment, Hale led the final strike. Human vessels poured through the breach, targeting the remaining hubs. Explosions lit the void, one after another, until the once immaculate order of the Council collapsed into chaos. Threxer's image flickered across Hale's screen. For the first time, his composure cracked. You have doomed yourselves. Without order, the galaxy will burn. You will drown in the very fire you kindle. Hale met his gaze with unyielding steel. Better a galaxy free and burning than chained in silence. Humanity will rise, and nothing will stop us again. The connection died as Threxer's vessel vanished into retreat, his armadas scattering. Silence fell across the stars, broken only by the distant crackle of wreckage. The cycle had been shattered. On the bridge, the crew stared at Hale, eyes wide with disbelief. Velis leaned heavily on his staff, tears carving lines down his weathered face. It is done. For the first time in 1,000 years, it is truly done. Hale gazed into the abyss beyond the viewport, scarred and weary, yet unbroken. He thought of Joran's wild laughter, of Rurik's final sacrifice, of the children on Solara Prime scavenging by candlelight. All their lives, all their deaths, woven into this moment. Remember this day, he said softly, more to himself than the crew. Remember that humanity does not kneel. Not to fear, not to the Council, not ever again. The words settled into silence, heavy and eternal. The stars stretched endless before them, no longer boundaries, but a horizon waiting to be claimed. For the first time, humanity's story was not one of cycles and suppression. It was a story of ascent, unstoppable and unbound. And Hale Draven, scarred yet steadfast, carried the promise that no one, no alien council, no shadow of history, would ever erase humanity again.